Thank you once again for joining us on the Four Wise Men. What's going on, fellas?
Good evening,
What
family.
up?
Chilling.
D. Come on, Fitty. You got 96 then. All right, so I get it done.
What's up, good people? What's up? Welcome to the Four Wise Men with my man Greg, not so NICE.
Hey man, I don't like that. I was
D
joking
Smooth,
the first
D,
time. I'm
D,
nice.
D Smooth, my man T.O., and I'm your boy
Time out,
Light.
baby.
Y'all funny, man. Y'all funny. But thank you for joining us for our podcast. This is a podcast where we unite generations through candid discussions on sports, music, men's mental health, friendship, entertainment, and politics. And as we're starting this journey, we want to thank you. We've been talking a lot about relationships and friendships, but trust us, as you'll see from our shorts and the different things we put out, you'll get some nice little clips on this brotherhood, this band that we're forming right here. Our aim is to pass on timeless principles of wisdom while connecting with local influencers, creating a space where diverse voices resonate. Join us each week for insightful conversations that transcend time and bridge the gaps between past, present, and future. And just for the record, because we were just talking about the halftime show, knowing that a tour was just released called Past, Present, and Future, we had this in our mission statement or our intro long before that tour was announced. So when we say past, present, and future, what we're talking about is those generations who came before us, those individuals who are living now, and making sure we bridge ourselves into the future as we move forward. So, fellas, good evening.
Good
What's up?
evening.
D Smooth, what you got for us this evening, my man?
So the topic tonight, and we brushed on it a little bit in the previous episode, but we want to talk about society's sort of expectations on men and sort of the stigma of not showing emotion as being part of that, and our ability to feel the pressures of being either the provider for our family. Obviously, as we talked a little bit before about some of the things that we share, and where we were talking about fixing problems instead of really listening to what those were and then trying to react to them and trying to fix them. I think it's kind of ingrained in us to also be protectors. So as we talk to different generations, how has that changed? What that definition of what they feel from society is the expectation of men, because some of the younger generation has similar views, but at the same time there's a little bit of and I don't know if it just comes with the way technology has influenced people of this sort of new generation, but the levels of expectation seem to have risen society wise as well for some. So I think it's a broad topic, but I think it's important to kind of get out there as far as what we see as men, what we feel society has sort of expected from us, and how did we learn what we felt like we should live up to as men.
Okay.
So I'll let you guys start.
He said you're letting us start. You gave us.
I'm the closer. I'm the closer on my topic.
I'm with you. So real quick on this, right? Let's just, I don't know. This, like you said, it's a very broad topic.
Yeah.
I think we should first, let's kind of go through what are we, in your viewpoint, what do you say is being a man? What is the expectation you believe for being a man, and how would you believe you came to that idea?
Right. Well, in the video that we saw earlier, we the one that Will had sent out with the group of men that were talking about what it means to be a man, and some of the things that they were talking about, where they were saying that some grew up with the expectation that you weren't allowed to be emotional, right? You weren't allowed to cry. You were supposed to be tough. You were supposed to give off the energy of being what they felt was this definition of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And and Toby, you and I kind of relate. We have our wonderful significant others who have worked long and hard at their career, and they're the ones who are the breadwinners, right? So how does that, from a man's standpoint, from that stigma for so long about the men being the ones that provide for the family and things of that nature, did you ever struggle with that piece of going, my partner is the one that provides the more financial stability here? Is there an ego thing to that, or is there more of a, this is a partnership and we each bring something to the table?
Okay.
That's that answer is a gazillion pieces. Shoot. I mean, let's just be honest. So if I go way back, because actually I was thinking about this earlier on after you had sent the notes, and I was just thinking through it. I'm like, man, my entire dating, I've always dated, especially when I was a young adult in my 20s and stuff. I was always dating women who made more money than I did. Because I'll be honest, I wasn't 100% focused on having a career. I believed in working, having a job, being able to, have a job, have health care, a 401k of some sort, but I wasn't I honestly, as I look back now, I was never really focused on having a career. And so with that ego part of it, I didn't deal with that. And then honestly, what really solidified that whole ego out the door was when I was like 23, 24, and I was working at this call center, and this older white guy, who was working as a supervisor with me. I was talking to him. I was like, "Hey man, you're doing this as a part-time job. Why?" He's like, "Man, I do this as a part-time job so I can get out of my house." He was a he was a white gentleman who gave up his degree in being a CPA so that he could have a family. His wife wanted a career and didn't want to be at home with the kids. So he was like, "Yo, I'll forego what I thought for my life as a career because I want to have the family. I prefer to have the family. So I'm going to forego my career, let my wife have her career, and I'm going to do this. Be at home." He took care of the kids. He part-time as a CPA, and then he part-time as a supervisor at this call center. And when I talked to him and we talked about all the different, because we talked about it. So what it's like when you go out to, his wife's job, and, he's like, hey, I said, "What do you say?" He's like, "I'm a stay-at-home dad." He's like, "I got no problem with it because this is what I wanted. I wanted a family, and I'm still providing." And literally, honestly, I didn't realize it till recently. Like, that really solidified me in this whole ideology of like, yo, if I'm doing my part, what I agreed to with my partner, then I'm performing all what I agreed to at the best of my ability, or learning to adapt to get better as we progress, then I'm fine. I'm fine with it. And honestly, when my wife and I got married, I had agreed with like, yo, we're gonna follow your career. Wherever your career takes us, I'm here. I'm gonna do my part, whatever the season calls for at that time. You know, as we were overseas, I did my best to, I took care of the house until I actually got a job at the embassy, and then I did that. You know what I mean? And so, but I realized my job was to be supportive of her career. So I'll leave it there because it's like I said, we can dive in.
There's more to
But for that part, the whole financial situation, no, I realized like there was other things to provide, um, and be supportive of. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
100%. same here. When Angela and I got together, she'd already been established, at her job for so long. I don't think I ever had an ego about it. I think I had, let me make sure I'm doing everything I can to be an equal partner. And it may not come financially, it may come in other avenues, whatever that looked like. But from a partnership standpoint, I think I still had the little bit of, um, I need to make sure that I'm bringing the equal amount or more to the table. Do you know what I mean? Not in a financial sense, but just as a partnership sense.
I know y'all looking like, when are we going to jump in? But y'all,
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be the financial standpoint. I know
Greg,
that.
hey, Greg, I'm looking at you trying to have, like, as long as he stays straight face, I'm gonna stay straight face. Like, I'm going to do the blink challenge. I'm going to not blink. I'm just going to stay stone face.
Yeah.
As you guys are talking, because I know this is just us getting into it, and this is just hopefully that's just the intro, because D-Smooth, you sent out several topics that I think are worth us kind of delving into, and so I just kind of pulled up your notes real quick when it comes to equality so I'm going to look at it from an equality standpoint from the masculine side. When I look at this, I know you guys talk about that. One of the things I don't do is I'm not an individual. I've been fortunate enough in my career, my work career, but I don't focus heavy on finances when it comes to relationship and being. To me, that has nothing to do with my manhood, at least for me, because I know where I started in my career. Like I say, my first job was housekeeping or cleaning up in a hospital. And I remember having that first job. And when I got that job, I didn't feel less. I looked at the individuals around me, and I was working in a hospital up in Baltimore. And as I was working at this hospital, what I realized, the similarities between what I was seeing in the hospital and what I saw growing up in East Baltimore. And what I was seeing was, I was like, okay, your housekeeping crew was your street corner runners, is how I defined them. They were the guys that were the runners, and then when I saw some of the the phlebotomists and the different individuals who porters who would push people around, I was like, okay, these are the people that bring the product and do all of that stuff. The product were the patients. But you had listen, bro. I grew up where I grew up, and so
no, I'm not. I'm following. I'm just saying. I hope the viewers have seen The Wire.
but see, one, The Wire is West Baltimore,
right.
And I'm from East Baltimore. So I'm East Baltimore. What was Method Man's character on there? Which was so funny that he happened to be from,
Cheese.
Yeah. It's so funny. Cheese was from East Baltimore. I ain't like how his character sold out his cousin, but that's just that game. It is what it is. But nonetheless, that's a spoiler alert for those who have or have not seen it. But nonetheless, as I'm working in this hospital, I work my way through all of when I'm seeing these different individuals in the roles that they're in and watching, and I saw the doctors as being the ones who were the suppliers from across sea, and they were the ones who had to pull. They were the ones who kind of called the shots. And so when I first started working that job, my thought process was simple. I looked at them and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I was like, I viewed myself, I didn't view myself as less when I started working in that hospital. I didn't view myself by my pay or that position. I view myself as okay, you know what? I want that. I want that level of responsibility. I want that level of, if that's the hierarchy, I wanted that because I believe that about myself. And because I believe that about myself, it was from that point forward, what I always saw was myself achieving in whatever career I chose. And so when I look at it from a masculinity and equality standpoint, I didn't bring that as a part of my relationship at the time. What I looked at that as was, when I talked to my then wife at the time, when I talked to her about the situation, was all I was saying, what I would talk about was, this is where I want to be. I want to achieve these things. And it wasn't achieving them for the finances. It was achieving them because I just believed I could. And because I believed I could, I looked at anything I accomplished as what we accomplished, is how we were getting there. And so my mindset was always on, the finance never defined me. The position never defined me. The accomplishments and more growing together was my priority. And because that was my mindset, I never settled for anything. So when you speak about the equality in the relationship, I can relate to that standpoint. But in any relationship that I've been in, finances has not been a factor. It's not a factor in my current relationship for this reason. I'm only concerned about the two of us and how we're growing together, less about the earning. And I would never say what I'm earning or what I'm doing. I always tell people, I said, while I don't focus on money, my services don't come cheap, but like that's a factor. But I don't like it doesn't define who I am, man. I live by a particular code, relationships, and once we get into the episode when we talk about know your not just knowing your role, which is this episode, but know me. Like, how do you know who you are? You'll realize like I'm a relationship driven, relationship oriented person, and finances they cool, but they will never ever make me who I am. And within the relationship, I can't let it define my masculinity because, like I said, when I was that housekeeper, sweeping floors and doing everything I was doing at that hospital, I felt no less than the doctors. I felt no less than the administrators. I felt no less than any of those guys. And as a matter of fact, like I said, you could do just the same. I was going to say something that was going to get me in trouble on the podcast, but I'm gonna leave that. I was great. Feel myself real quick, Greg, and then realize I should not do that right now in this part of my life. So
This topic is very challenging for me because
well, good.
I have a lot of different views from what I believe society expects from us as men, especially with regard to relationship. I don't believe in any gender roles at all, period. Feel like everything a man can do, a woman can do. And I've always felt like that my whole life. So with that, I don't expect to, have to take out the trash every day. If it's full, take the damn trash out. I don't feel like, I should be relegated to all the yard work. If the grass is tall and I'm busy, you can cut the damn grass too. Just the same as I'm cooking dinner, I'm, sweeping and mopping, I'm washing clothes, I'm taking care of the children. Like legit in my experience, the first couple weeks that each one of them, kids came home, it was me, 100%. Growing up, I was a babysitter, took care of my cousins, took care of my, I actually babysitted legitimately for some church members. So, or babysat anyway. I feel like it's not fair in essence to say, you're expected to do all of this, but these are your assigned tasks. Because I feel like it's always been, let's tell men what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to behave, but there's no accountability on the other side. So I said, I'm just not subscribing to any of that trash. It's very difficult for me because knowing who I am and moving the way that I move, a lot of people, have an issue with it.
But what does that mean? What does that mean when you say knowing who you are and knowing how you move? Because just think, we're having a conversation. So the conversation is supposed to be real and transparent. So who are you and how do you move where you feel like people would have an issue with it?
That's what I was going to give you an example. I had a conversation with a cousin of mine recently. Well, it was like a year ago. And she was yelling at me because in this conversation, I was saying a few of the things that I said, like, I don't know, why in my situation, my kids have to be away from me. They're not getting anything, that they not getting here when they're over there. And my cousin asked me, she was like, do you think you could be a better mother than their mom? Yes, I do. But nobody understands me when I say that. Like, we look and we hold, single moms on our shoulders all day. And I would have been nothing. She taught me how to be a man and she taught me how to be soft and X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. But when I say, confidently, I can handle both roles, is always, contradiction coming from, both directions or all directions. So I kind of, I'm listening, I'm observing, I'm watching y'all.
Nah, that's not fair, bro. I think when we speak and when we're speaking tonight, like these move gave us some topics. We started off on the breadwinner topic and just to touch on that a little bit, just to kind of get views. But these move, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think when we speak, I think you delve into that because you said a man could do both. And the single mom gets credit and those things like that. Each one of us come from a different background. Your mom and your dad, your mom and your dad are still together, right?
Yes,
Right?
yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Same thing I think with D Smooth. My dad wasn't in my life. I think the same with Toby, where it was this in and out type of situation. So I think when you're talking about that, I think that's a good place to kind of transition to when it comes to the role that a man plays when it comes like how do we view masculinity and raising kids and being parents and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you brought up parents, and that's one of my main reasons to feel the way that I feel. Because in my household, my mother did everything. My mother did everything. She did yard work. She put together all the furniture that we had. She, built things. She didn't show me how to work on cars, but she put me in positions to learn. I didn't learn any of that from my dad. None of it. So when it comes to these are the roles that men are supposed to take, it's hard for me to, go along with that because that's not what I experienced at all. Not to say that my dad had no value in the house, because he definitely was in the military. So my healthcare came from my dad. The food that we ate came from my dad, from the commissary because of him. But some of those marks that other dads hit, I didn't get from him. But that's not to, cut him at his knees, but
Let me ask
it's
you this
just
real
my
quick.
experience.
I'm gonna cut you off on purpose. Because that whole, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Nah, I'm cutting you off on purpose. I want to ask, in this regard. So, was dad out working all the time and mom was taking care of the home, or
Yeah,
did mom work and take care of the home?
she worked and took care of the home. Yeah, both
All
of
right.
my parents had full-time jobs all the time. But it's really a lot more. And I know my dad's gonna watch this show because I kind of don't want to,
But
be
I
like,
don't
hey,
think
he
you go
didn't do
down
this
there
and
and
he didn't
back.
do this.
So I
Yeah.
don't
But
think you go down that route. So how did the role when you're talking about, because I think we're supposed to be talking from our perspective. So when you're talking about how that impacted you, and I know everybody else got to talk, but my thought is so when you saw that from your mom, you said you feel like a man can do just the same. So you learned these characteristics from your mom. So when you're talking about that, that helps you see roles. You don't define your parenting style from what a male should do, what a female should do. You basically learn some qualities from your mom that you apply in your parenting style, and in doing so, you don't see it as a mother father role. You just see it as a parenting
yeah,
position.
something that needs to be done.
Yeah, copy that.
Yeah. I will say the nurturing aspect that usually is assigned to women in relationships. I don't have that. I don't have that. I do, but I don't. So definitely I would say that in a relationship,
Put a
I
pin in that.
would look to my partner to fill in that space. But I mean, like we've had talks before. Will, I do hair. I know how to sew.
You do hair? What?
Yes, I have 2 daughters, bro.
You don't have hair? What?
Did y'all figure out how we can kick him out the No,
No,
but
I mean that's cool though. I mean the fact that you do hair, you do all that stuff, and I mean on a serious note, from what I've seen, my experiences with you, with your girls and everything, you do that. You know what I'm saying? Um, I do believe that there needs to be dual parenting in the household for full growth for various reasons, but at the same time, everyone has to be present too, right? And I think that's all part of the conversation as well, because I think you can have two parents in the house, but if one parent's not present, mentally and physically not present, then they might as well be absentee, right? That's just a part of the conversation. So I can completely understand where you're coming from, and what you're and how you arrived to your thought process, where you are with that. Um, I have no idea where my parenting style comes from. because I
Family
mean,
matters.
Family matters.
I mean, but I mean the social norms. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. How many strong fathers really were on, like, and I mean whole complete fathers were on TV through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. I mean, I
It
can
de-
only really account a few, so
we
to
first
speak.
got to define what that means, though.
What
Yeah, I
that
was gonna say
means.
that's what
Yeah.
I was gonna say as we're sitting here, that's one of the things we're talking about when you say what is yeah, and I think because for the sake of all of our time, like I say, we can make it very broad, but I
Hmm.
think from a parenting, like where you get your parenting style and how do you think the masculinity role plays into it, I think it's just what we do in these roles. And I know D Smooth talked a little bit last week about how Noah's coming into, like the role that how he's evolving, how that impacts, his relationship with Noah. So D Smooth, why don't you speak a little bit about how as you're evolving, and even from how you were raised from a masculine standpoint, from your perception of what masculinity was, how that impacts you with Noah.
Yeah, it's so Greg, I totally felt what you were saying, especially because I had two parents who worked full-time jobs. And my dad worked two jobs sometimes. Um, so it was, especially when I was really young, he was most people don't know this, but he did work construction. He helped build the metro, and he was a bartender. So he did both of those things. And my mom worked for a law firm as I think like a secretary or legal secretary, but those were full-time jobs. Those were long hours and commitments. And so, you know, my mom was the tender caregiving, played the role of the sensitive mom and was there for, bandages, cuts, bruises, things like that, and showing affection and love, where my father was more of the um probably the stereotypical thing that you would see, right? The macho guy that drove or rode Harleys and drove sports cars, and you know um when we were able to afford it at some point, when we got kind of settled, had a jet ski, just would build decks at the house, would work on cars, all of those things that, the stereotypical sort of what you associate with, the manly man. And I had zero interest in any of it. I played sports, right? I was in martial arts for like 12 or 13 years. I played baseball. I played hockey. We would play, backyards football. We'd play basketball. I was into sports, had no interest in learning how to ride a motorcycle, had no interest in learning how to build things, had no interest in, working on cars, none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't associate that with, sort of being more geared towards, my mom's loving tender side and anti my dad's sort of machoism type situation. It was just a recognition of that's what they brought to that household, and I looked for a different path. I looked for the middle
Mm-hmm.
of, I wanted to be able to at some point have the ability to open and share and love and care, but at the same time be somebody that could be viewed as having a strength, right? Whatever that entails, not necessarily, big and physical, but just enough of a presence of strength.
Hmm.
And I think with Noah, I I wanted to make sure that I brought both of those things, because from a child standpoint, he needs to know that somebody's there to protect him, right?
Mm-hmm.
At this age. But he also knows that I'll curl up on the couch with him and, wrestle around with him and, love on him just as much as his mom would. So I always felt like I wanted to make sure that he got that not just from his mom, but that I was providing that tenderness, that love, that care, along with the fact that he knows that he can trust me to be that strong figure as well. And even though, like I said, I didn't, really gravitate towards my dad in that way, like from a,
Mm-hmm.
you loved your dad. I loved my dad, but we didn't connect in that way. And so I just, as I was growing up and learning things, and I try to just navigate an area kind of in the middle that I would be able to have enough qualities to that when I had my kid, that I would be able to bring both those things to the table.
Do you ever feel like you ever had like periods or moments of friction for not gravitating toward the things that your dad was involved in?
And look, I could be wrong, and I'm sure he probably would say it's not true, but there was the sense of, I felt like there was disappointment, right? Because when I left martial arts, he was still going. And, I understood that he, if I would win in tournaments or, bring home trophies or whatever it was, he was, I can sense he was proud of that. But I think there was a little bit of him that was like, why did you give it up? You know what I mean? And then why don't you want to help me build a deck? Why don't you want to learn how to ride a motorcycle? Why don't you know what I mean? So there was for a long, long time, I think, this weight of feeling like I was that kind of disappointment in that sense. But as I got older, I really came to terms of like, that's not me, so it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, that's who you are as a person. That is not who I am as a person, and I'm fine with that. But for a long time before I got to that type of wisdom and age, it was, it weighed on me a little bit because it just felt like I wasn't meeting some certain standard based on what he felt was like the view of being the masculine son. You know what I mean? Like, that's my boy kind of thing, like growing up in the same sort of, but his childhood was not great. His childhood was horrible. So I can understand if there was a little bit of a disconnect for showing that type of, love and care.
Affection. And it's funny when you guys, so I know T.O., you brought up, because the aspect of seeing what a father was on TV and stuff like that, and trying to understand those dynamics. Because like I say, each person is raised differently when it comes to how parenting, that, like what that was. And for me, and so I'll start by saying the narrative that I don't like that often is that is assigned to the Black community and to Black fathers is, we talk about them not being there, and that somehow it's raised as a stigma. So when I say this, the role that my father didn't play a role, but it didn't define who I was going to be as a parent. I didn't have other individuals to. So my grandmother had 9 children. So I had 4 uncles. I'll make sure I get that right before I get that right. So I grew up around 4 uncles. TC, all right, Tyrone, Marty, 4 uncles. So I grew up around 4 uncles who had their family. And the only reason I say that is because everybody was always around, but I didn't observe or watch them parenting. I didn't look at them from a parenting standpoint. They were just my uncles. They were cool. We hung out. We had cookouts. We did all of those different things. But so even though my father wasn't there, I had male presence always in and around the home, always seeing them. But that didn't define what parenting would be for me. It was so funny because growing up where I grew up, I did see people having kids at an early age. And when you would see these people having kids at an early age, I remember at one point in time, I used to be, I didn't babysit or babysat like you, Greg, but I would watch other family members and friends' children. I would watch them for them as a teenager, and I would see the love that the child had towards the parent. So that kind of gave a desire in me I wanted to feel that love when I was younger. And so had the first of three kids when I was turning 18. And in doing that, like, that was a pivotal moment for me in my life. And it was not like someone sat down and, taught me how to be a dad and talked to me about what it would take. I was glad that when people say you want a son, I was actually very happy that I had a girl. I was very happy that I had a girl. And one of the reasons I was very happy that I had a girl was I didn't want to pass on to her all of the bad behaviors that I felt. And like intuitively, I didn't want to pass on to her or pass on to my child the negative things that I felt from being actually a boy, which was crazy. because like I say, no one talked to me about it. But when she came into the world, I felt like she made me a better human being. She definitely made me a better man, because I would look at being like, you had to kind of raise a daughter differently. And so you would want to be more, not just more tender. Being a young dad, didn't know how to have the patience, didn't know how to do those things, but I didn't want her to fear me. I didn't want her to be just to only see that impatience and anger from a young parent. And I realized a lot of those characteristics was, if I had a boy, I felt like I would have shown all of that to him. I felt like I would have been the punch you in the chest dad, like, man, toughen up, be strong, do these things. But with the girl, it wasn't to be less strong. What I taught her, what my approach was different. I would teach her it was nothing that she couldn't accomplish. It was nothing that she couldn't do. Had she was reading by the time she was 2 years old, and the time she was reading, then when she was in pre-K, she got skipped from pre-K to kindergarten. Like, I had this whole mission and this whole mindset of, you're going to be great through education. It didn't matter that I was young, didn't matter that her mom was young, didn't matter that, where we came from. I like her fortitude and toughness was going to not be built off of being like, put your fists up, let's get ready to fight. It was going to be built off of, there's not that same mentality I had, like I said, when I was in the hospital, like, you can accomplish anything, was what I wanted for her. And so I'm very appreciative and thankful to God, because I feel like a lot of what I call intuitive, what was intuitive in me, I feel like those things were given to me as gifts to kind of become this better dad that I didn't realize I was at the time. But as I was becoming this better dad, it wasn't because of whether it was TV or assignments in front of me. It was more about what I wanted to be to her. And then as she got older, and then her younger sisters came, 8 years later, once her younger sisters came, that same mentality was there. I was going to be the dad that was not in a particular role. I wasn't going to just work to be a provider, and their mom had these things to do. Nope. Cooking, like you said, Greg, that was a priority. Cleaning, I did do the grass. I did, but none of that stuff to me was about gender roles. It was, but even beyond that, it was the nights where, and if you, I think, Greg, I don't think your girls are teenagers yet, but when the teenager starts to rebel, and when the oldest daughter starts to rebel, and it's one thing that where you could be the disciplinarian, or you could be the friend sitting on the side of the bed having the conversation, and you're knowing when to choose to be firm, but showing up at the dance practices, those weren't abnormalities or look at me, I'm here. That was my responsibility. That was so being a dad for me, and being in that role was like you said, it was less about being gender and thinking I'm providing. It was more about, I want them to know whatever they're going through in life, they can rely on, talk to, and have me there from an emotional, a physical standpoint, whereas though I wanted them to be connected to me, just like I say, I'm relational. I wanted them to be connected to me. And so that had nothing to do with my gender or my title as dad. It had more to do with my responsibilities to them as human beings. And I would always tell them, I said, you could talk to me about anything. I said, because in our humanity, I said, we're equal. I said, our positions are different. And I said, because I'm not going to abdicate or give up my role as your parent and as your father. I said, but from a humanity standpoint, I told my daughter, says, you could talk to me about anything from a very young age, because I wanted them to know that they had equality and humanity with their father, and that the role, that my role didn't mean I could demean, belittle, or treat them like anything less than a human being that they were created to be.
Can I ask you a question, Will?
Yeah,
And
please.
This is a kind of just a thought pattern. So I know when you were saying that, so with your dad not being in the picture, did you ever find yourself, when you were having your kids, either subconsciously or thinking actively, like, okay, he isn't in the picture, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to be in the picture, like it was more of an emphasis?
So that was a part, that was a factor. When my ex was pregnant, when she got pregnant, when we were teenagers, I reached out to him. I actually called him, and this, Greg, I want you to laugh at this, because this is what I thought it was so funny. When I called him, I hadn't spoken to him since I was 10 years old. I was 17 going on 18. And so my thought is I didn't, he had other children. So I had sisters and brothers that were out there. I don't call them half sisters; they're my sisters and brothers. But I had these siblings that were out there, and I met a sibling, one of his other children, and she gave me his phone number, and I called him just to let him know. And I called him and said, I know you weren't in my life, but I just wanted to let you know you're having a grandkid.
Look, man, I just want to let you know that I got my diploma. I ain't never been arrested. I don't have a whole bunch of kids running around.
And I wanted to, just for him to say that.
Yeah.
And in me, I was looking for him to kind of have this response of being proud and trying to make amends. But he said nothing. He just was quiet on the phone. And the reason I say, Greg, you should laugh is you remember Nick Cannon when he was in, what was it, Drumline, where he goes to his father in the little booth and he wanted his father to be proud. And he cries when he that was my Nick Cannon moment from Drumline where I'm calling my father on the phone and I make a joke out of it, but it was one of those things that it pissed me off. It did. So when you say that it so pissed me off, and I said to him, I was like, I let him know, I said, I'm going to be a way better father than you.
And I'm having a whole bunch of kids. I'm going to be a better father than he ever was. And I sure as hell don't need him for that, because ain't a damn thing he could ever teach me about how to love my kids.
I actually said that to him on the phone, hung up, never spoke to him again. And so I would say it did factor in to the fact that I knew I was going to be there. But once again, I wanted to be there as a whole entire parent. So yeah, it did affect me when he, even in that moment, like I say, when he had the opportunity to say, well, congratulations or something. That dude said nothing at all. That was one of the, like I say, my Nick Cannon Drumline tear rolling down the eye, Will Smith, why don't he want me moment.
Right.
From off of Fresh Prince.
Yo, I am trying to do my best not to cry. Like, y'all don't even understand. Like dead serious. Like, I am trying to hold back tears, fam, because y'all making me think through some things. Like, I didn't even realize we're there. You know what I'm saying?
You ain't by yourself, bro. This emotional as hell for me. This emotional as hell for me.
No, I think this may be even a later topic down the line.
Immediately when you started talking, I was like, oh man, the last episode of Fresh Prince. I mean, not the last one, but you know what I'm talking about.
The empty house.
When the dad didn't want, when he said Uncle Phil, why don't he want
me? Like,
that resonates so real and pisses you the hell off.
I still cry every time I see the episode.
Yeah, that hurt, bro.
I cry.
That hurt.
That hurts. I remember the first time I watched the episode, as soon as the episode went off, I laid on my floor and boo-hooed. I can't, like, I really want to rewatch that whole, but I'm gonna skip that episode because that episode hurt so much. Because, like, when you call your dad and you're like, yo, Pop, yo, me, and your father doesn't give you that validation that you're looking for,
right.
It hurts immensely. And like, I was thinking back through, like, what were my challenges? Like, I had my uncle, my one uncle, I love to life. And honestly, when I look at marrying my life and all that stuff, he's the one I look at. Like, he showed me, yo, this is how you go through things. This is how you just that dude. He's that dude. And really the whole family looks at him like he's that dude. No matter who, like, he's hands down, he's the best uncle. I don't care. They can watch it and they'll see it. I don't give a dang. What you gonna do? Fight me? I'll beat all y'all old behinds up. Anyway.
I'm not jumping in.
Anyway, but like, I realized, like, I made mistakes early on in my young years that jammed me up in being a father. Like, I had some kids out of marriage, right? Which to the stereotypical ideology, I realized I got bogged down with that. Like, I failed, I suck. I'm not going to be a great dad because I'm not in the house with my kids. I want to be, but however, the relationship between them, the mothers and I, it's not going to work. I can see right now, just where we are, it ain't going to work. I want to be the best dad. But it just didn't work out. So that created this divide within myself of I failed because my kids are not in my house. I have kids outside of my house. So it just started that decline and like, yo, I'm just gonna suck as a parent. And so I realized I've had to fight through those challenges in my marriage and dealing with the kids in my house and of course outside of the house. Um, I never even thought about it in that perspective before until we started talking about it now. Like, yo, what was your thought process? And I'm like, man, that's where my thoughts were. I was hurting for the longest time. I hurt. Even going to therapy, I've realized I go through moments where I still hurt because, all
Yep.
my kids are not in my house. You know,
Yeah, but Toby, you recognize how great of a parent you are now, right?
no,
You
Yeah.
don't.
I
But
don't.
D
I'll
Smooth, I
be
think when you say that to him, I was going to ask Toby, because Toby, I actually wanted to ask you that because I think even for what he's doing now, I think there's a guilt that comes from not feeling like you're there or supporting your kid. That's just tough, bro. And
Right.
I used to think
No,
about that with my man. I actually did. I used to think about that for you, bro. Like I did, like thinking about how tough that has to be for you just going through those moments, bro.
no, I'm not. Dude, is my therapist, man. I love that dude to life. He's like, Toby, you doing your best? I said, I'm trying. He's like, then that's all you can do, bro. He's like dead serious. He's like, did you do the best you can do? 98% of the time, yeah. He's like, then what are you talking about?
Hmm.
What are you talking about? He's like, you're not going to be perfect. But if you feel like you gave a 98% effort, then what are we talking about here? What do you feel bad for? I said, because I'm not there. He's like, okay. And he's like, look, when your kids show up, what are you going to do? I'm going to be there. All right, then. There's nothing else you can do, bro. And that's the fight I deal with day in, day out. Many, many weeks of prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Every the prayer, like, Lord, just let my actions be enough. And then where I fall short, please fill in for me. Like that's a constant prayer because I don't have my kids in my house, and even sometimes even with the kids in my house, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, trying to work through these teenage years. Lord help me.
Mm.
Some work
Do
there,
you,
buddy.
Teenage
Toby,
years, college, you know.
have you
You
had
still got a young one.
She getting the 3 times work over because I mean, like, you know, making sure I hug her, making sure
Mm-hmm.
that I take the time to cuddle, making sure that I'm in her space doing what she wants to do, right? Being diligent with that. And then, of course, like I said, sometimes when I'm done doing that, I feel sad because I don't get to do that. I didn't get a chance to do it with my others. You know what I'm saying? Um, and so, now I'm trying to learn how to play PlayStation 5, even though I have no idea how to play that. So that I can be in their space. You know what I'm saying? That's their thing. They like
Mm-hmm.
all of the kids that don't live here, they love being on PS5. And I'd be like, I'm like, I don't know how to.
I'm the same with Josh. Josh can play all the PlayStations, the Xboxes. Meanwhile, I'm over here with my Super Nintendo, still trying to, figure out how to beat Zelda. You know what I mean? Like I can't. Like I go into Josh's room and I'm just like, this looks like a movie to me. Like this doesn't even look like a video game. It just looks like a movie.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what they look like. Yeah.
yeah, and we give each other a hard time, but
Greg, can you help us out with that, bro?
what PlayStation?
PS5.
I'll try.
we'll try.
He's a,
I'll try.
aren't you? He's an Xbox dude, aren't you?
Hey, matter of fact, no, I have all of them. Will, you would probably like Def Jam Vendetta because they got some of the Woo characters in there fighting.
Yeah. Oh.
No, Toby, I got a serious question for you, man. Listening to you and how you're struggling with the fact that your kids,
Greg put on a hard-hitting newsman face.
Mm-hmm.
Look at him.
your
I got a
kids.
serious question for
No,
you.
this is a serious question because it's coming from my own experience. Do you talk to the kids in your household about your experience and how you feel and your emotions associated with
Mm.
not having their siblings in the house. And I ask you this because of my experience. I grew up with my brother, but my sister grew up with her mom. And my dad never talked about it. And we're talking about what makes a man. My view of a man was, it kind of had a cloud over it because I didn't like the fact that my dad didn't talk about my sister, didn't fight for her to be around more. And that affected my relationship with my sister. I would have appreciated if we had open conversations about why she not here. What's the experience like, knowing what, the emotional toll was on him. Cause I'm not in the same experience with you, but every other week I feel those feelings. Why my kid's not here? I'm not able to, protect them. I'm not able to mentor them. So I kind of feel how you're feeling, but then I feel how I felt as growing up, not knowing what my dad was going through because he didn't talk about it.
Well, there you go, digging into a whole nother topic, man. Good Lord. Like, how does it feel to be stuck in the middle? Like, that's a whole topic in itself. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
Like,
hey, wait,
no,
tell me, what are we talking about? In the middle of what? Because that's a
your
whole
emotions
nother
and feelings.
episode. That's a
Your
whole
whole
nother episode.
emotions and feelings.
Because in the middle it's great. It's beautiful. It's moist.
Listen.
Get out of here.
So, I mean, I have the oldest girl in the house. We've had times where we've talked about um the oldest boy out of the house, and we've had perspective conversations, but we haven't had full conversations because that's just a challenge, right? Trying to talk to your teenagers, that's a whole nother conversation. But I've shared that there has been challenges. It's not that I haven't wanted to be there for him or both of them, for any of them. I mean, I always want to be there for any of them. Um, I try my best on multiple times throughout the week, text messages, phone calls. Some get returned, some don't. Um, and that's been for years. Like, I've had to explain, like, you don't understand. I have text I have text the one child 3, 4 times in a week and get no response. Do you know how hard that is
Yeah.
as a human being? And then just as a human being, like, let's not even talk about father son. You know what I'm saying? That equality that that Light was talking about earlier. Like, yo, just I text you. You can just say stop dead. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather you text back, be like, yo, just stop dead. Like, then it lets me know, okay, then I don't have to do this. But just to go unanswered for years, that hurts. That takes a toll. But I knew as a parent, for me, I could never have it be that, yo, my dad didn't reach out to me. Because I know what it feels like to have a dad not reach out. I know what it's like to want to talk to your dad, and it's dramatic. And it's just unnecessary dramatics because for the longest time, I couldn't comprehend the way my dad thought. I still don't, but God's given me a different peace and understanding in talking to him. But also realized there's some things that had to resolve within me. And in all these relationships, as trying to be a parent, a lot of stuff has to resolve within yourself so that you can communicate effectively and openly to the children, because you realize the frontal lobe hasn't quite developed yet until like 25, as I keep learning. So that makes a challenge in communication.
And that's your frontal
So,
lobe. That
yeah.
don't put that on all of us, bro. I told you I was an 18-year-old dad, and my frontal lobe was kicking in full gear. So don't even try.
No, this is what I learned at the middle school, high school program. They said kids' frontal lobes don't develop until they're like 20, 25. So trying to communicate with them is just, hey, listen, that's what I learned. And if you want, I can go get
I was also we also learned that you only used to use one half, right brain, left brain, and
Right.
then they recently
Yeah.
just said to everyone, "No, you use your entire brain." And when I heard
Yeah.
that as a young man, I used to challenge that and be like, "Nah, I use my entire brain. I wasn't one of those left brain, right brain individuals.
So
I used the whole head."
I can understand a little bit what you're saying, Toby, because I I'm also a step parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I came into Josh's life when he was 7. And at the time, Josh's dad was his guy, right? Like his hero. Um, he did not act like it, right? I'm not trying to disparage somebody I don't really know that well, but he wasn't around. And he was one that the beginning part of Ange and I's relationship, he was one every 4 or 5 weekends, maybe. Like, and they would have to meet up kind of halfway where he was. But he moved out, out on the West Coast. So Josh didn't get the opportunity to really see him at that point, unless he had come over to the East Coast for whatever reason. So for a long time, though, and I recognize it, right? I'm not dad, right? So for a long time, Josh, that was his dad. So when Ange and I got married, I remember, I think at one point he asked me, like, what do I call you? And I told him, yeah, you call me whatever you want, right? I'm not going to make you call me dad. I'm not going to make you call me stepdad. You can call me just Damien if that's what makes you feel comfortable. Um, but I had this ongoing, and I get what you're saying, Toby, because from a certain perspective, I had to look at it and take a step back and go, I'm not that guy. So I don't know what his frame of thought is. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know if it's just too difficult emotionally to reach out to Josh, because their relationship fell apart, or whatever residual effects that may have been. So I tried not to have some sort of resentment in that sense, right? I didn't want to be the person that was like trying to think bad thoughts about this individual who isn't reaching out to his son like he should be. Where I don't know that story. I don't know him. I don't know what he goes through or what he went through, or what that whole process was. But I do know what I accepted was I can be whatever Josh needs me to be. Right? If he just needs me to be the stepdad that can just help him out in some way, shape, or form, that's what I'll be. If he needs me to just be the guy that just takes care of his mom, I can be that guy too, right? Like I wasn't going to put myself in a position to make him, you know, uncomfortable, or to me be something that he wasn't comfortable with being. Now, as Josh, when he got older, he recognized, like, or at least he came to some type of term on his own where he felt like, all right, this guy just doesn't want to be a part of my life, and he accepted it in that way. Um, but he went and tried it out. He went out to the West Coast to see his dad, and tried to live with him for a little while. I think it lasted 3 or 4 months, and he came home. And you know, people are different. People, like I said, we're not in a position to always understand what people do,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's the ability to put in the effort that's the difference. Right. So Toby, you're putting in the effort regardless, right? Even if those kids aren't in your home, you're still putting in the effort. And it may not be them being in your house every single day, but you're still putting out the effort. You're putting out text messages, or you're trying to make a way to see them, or you're trying to, establish or keep some sort of relationship. Where, in Josh's case, that kind of fell by the wayside. So, you know, I just made sure that as often as we bump heads, we are oil and water, but at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that I'm going to make sure that I can still try to provide those things for him that he needs. Like, he may not like it. He may not like the advice. He may not like the life lessons. He may not like, just trying to help him establish himself as a human being in this world. But I do think that he recognizes that there is that person in his life that will provide those things along with his mother, of course. And so it did kind of resonate a little bit when you were talking. I'm like, the big difference I see here, Toby, is that you put in the effort, whereas some people just don't put in the effort.
I think it's fair to say for all four of us, regardless of what society believes a man should be, if you're a father, being present, I would say we all agree, is a mark that you have to hit.
Amen. Amen, bro.
For sure.
100. I think, like you said, I will never, and when I say I will never, because I know even for certain individuals, the role changes. Like even when you're talking about Josh's real dad, I don't know what makes a person make that decision where they cannot, like they don't want to touch and be in touch with. So I'm not, like you say, I'm not going to judge it because I'm not in that role. But I know for me and for the relationships that we're talking about, to me, it has an impact. Even if you're that father not realizing, like my dad didn't realize the impact he was having on me, the impact that, and then like I say, we are, because I do know individuals who twist and say, I wanted to be a better father because, and I think I did used to say that, but I just wanted to be a better dad because I wanted to be connected to my kids. I wanted to be like in there, like the role that I was going to play in their lives. The reason that I wanted to, stay, the reason that I wanted to stay where I was because I wanted to make sure I was always with them. I never wanted to be in a place. One of the hardest things for me when that relationship was coming to an end, even though they were all older, was realizing I wouldn't be living in the same environment with them, realizing I would be now separate, even though they were, they were older, they were grown, and they were like, I realized, like, for the first time in my life, like we weren't going to be in the same household. And that was different for me, even though my oldest daughter had already got married and moved out. That was so different for me that presence that you're talking about, Greg, was like that was a like I actually cried the weekend before I knew I was going to be, leaving the home. Like I cried, like I bawled because it was like, damn, like this is new for me. Like I'm not used to this aspect of living life. And, it took me a couple of years to kind of get over that, not that presence or that continuous presence, because it was just not what I had, like I say, from my oldest, from the time I was 18 until, few years ago, that changed for me. And that's a lot of years in between to always be present and then have to kind of make that adjustment and transition to not being present. So you're right, Greg. I don't think there's to me, there's no role. There's no to me, I don't define that as masculinity or however it would be defined. I just define it as when you're a parent and you have that love and that affinity for your kids, and you just try to be as present as possible. You try to connect in the best way you know how. And these moves said it best, like, what T.O. is doing, he's trying to make sure he's staying connected. And I think, like, even for whatever burden that weighs on his heart, you continue because, bruh, you heavy in the faith. That's what God continues to do with us. I learned that a long time ago. Even when kids not listening, God continues to parent and continues to be present, even when you're not doing that stuff. And then once you recognize that grace and that kindness was always coming towards you, that's when you realize it's like, man, then you appreciate it even more and realize that love was there all the time. And you just pray for that, bro.
You better save those call logs. There will be a day. You didn't even try. Oh, I didn't?
Oh, yeah.
AT&T says otherwise.
Look at these all highlighted in yellow. This was just Tuesday.
Blocked, ignored. That's on you.
Oh, yo, I mean, we laughing and stuff, but for some kids, that's going to matter, right? Like, you're going to need them receipts, as they say.
Yep.
You
show
are.
receipts.
You are.
You know?
You had to subpoena Snapchat. Show all of the snaps I sent them now.
So fellas, because we've been in this for a minute.
Yeah.
It's one thing, and it's funny, D Smooth, you sent out several topics, and it's two that we didn't talk to. Toby said T.O. said he's going to talk to one a little bit later on. So I want us to leave that one off. and that's talking about men being victims of sexual assault. Because Toby, like I said, we're going to do a different podcast on that. But one other topic that I think would be very interesting for us to close on, because while we didn't, we talked about men and mental health, so we're expressing and showing our, our ability to kind of have conversations around it. But the one that I want to touch on as we close is like when from a role in society standpoint, men and men's aspects of men only wanting sex. D Smooth, you put that down as one of the kind of talking points. So I'd be interested to hear like each of our experiences, because it's phases. When you were coming up, what your thought process was, you're hot and heavy, just humping anything phase, and then like the mindset and the thought process now. So I'd be interested to hear like what the thought is.
Yeah, so this will be a separate topic later, because maybe when it gets to other things. So
I want to know what the fellas laughing at. Like, y'all got secret text messages going on.
They over there having side chats.
Like, I don't even know how they're having side chats.
Yeah, they're having side chats somehow.
I'm laughing at D Smooth, man. He was like, well,
yeah, because
I like boobies.
I'm
Honestly,
a hips and
y'all,
ass guy.
Listen.
I'm a hips
my
and
head,
ass guy, Greg. I'm sorry.
actually, my head was running. There's like so many comments I really just wanted to throw out there, because he was like, when Will was like, yeah, you go through that high horny stage and you just humping any and everything. I was like, well, some of us definitely experienced that for sure.
I had traumatic teenage relationships, right? I had I don't even know what you call it. I think it was more the essence of, again, part of when you're growing up and you see certain things. Like there was this certain aspect of, this is how you treat women, right? Like you hold the door open for them. You're always nice. You bring flowers. Like that was sort of where, in those early teenage years, those were the kind of things that were laid on me, right? So I would be that guy, right? And
he just like swallowed up, bro. I'm sorry. So
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Greg, I'm surprised you just didn't say it.
Yeah, I'm
right?
sure.
Like you should
Why
have just
not just say it?
You
bro?
should have just busted it out.
I'm trying to be serious. I'm trying to be serious.
Yeah.
You ain't supposed
I
to be
know.
serious. That's the appeal, bro. You supposed
Right.
to.
Yo, D,
Oh my gosh,
yo,
man.
D's over here laying out his heart. He talking about, you got swallowed up.
He said, "Have you ever been?"
Why didn't you just say it, Greg? Like
Go
you don't
ahead,
need to
man.
hide
Go
it in
ahead.
chat.
Go
If
ahead,
you
man.
feel it, let it go. If you feel it, let it go.
Oh man.
If the
We're gonna have to
power,
get.
If the spirit
compels
so
you,
moves you. Yeah.
We gotta
if the
get
power
Nicole
compels
to
you.
edit that in. Nicole has to edit that in.
I put my heart out on my sleeve, man. So, it was one of those typical situations where, if you were the nice guy, you kind of got stomped on a little bit, right? Like that's just how it was when I
What?
was.
You
Greg.
too?
See, we share. This is why we meet at our meetings on Wednesdays, Greg.
Yo, because I mean, honestly, yeah, the nice guys got stomped on because
right, and so
the nice guys.
And then it became, then after having that happen a few times in my early teenage years, where I had my viewpoint of relationships became not healthy, right? It was more or less of being involved with someone and opening up to someone, and that was not at the forefront of my brain at that time. Then it was just, I could really care less. If we're in a relationship, we are. If we're not, it doesn't matter to me. And it, like I said, not healthy. And obviously we all went through our own stages, but there was a girl who lived 3 doors down from me, and if I got home and she was like, "Hey, you want to come over?" I'd be like, "No." She's like, you live three doors down. I'm like, yeah, if you want to come over, you can come over, but I'm not getting back. I'm not going back out. Like that's how toxic my brain started to work because I just kept feeling like the more effort I was putting in relationships, I wasn't getting something reciprocated back that I think I was, looking for. So then my brain just switched to having that, you know, dismissiveness and not putting enough effort in. Um, because you take that, it's a different type of abuse, right? We talked about sexual abuse. This was just a different type of thing where you have somebody who doesn't treat you very well in a relationship, but because you have this mindset of always being the nice guy, always being the one that not necessarily apologize for something you shouldn't apologize for, but just being in that role of what can I do to make it better? Again, going back to the fixing thing. So yeah, I was just involved in a couple of those relationships. And then when I turned into that different mentality and we went through our stages, Toby,
That's when he
it just
started getting the sex.
right. With very little real commitment for it. And then obviously as you got older, you established healthier relationships and you established more adult type relationships, then it became better. But yeah, we were all kind of in that. I was in that spot for a long period. I'd say from 15 to about 23. I was in that time frame. Yeah.
I can definitely relate. And everything that you said, as soon as you start easing back on your effort, you start yeah. So the question was, do men just want sex?
But the question, the context of which the question should be answered is
Yeah.
where you like when you were younger, like what were your thoughts? Then that hot, horny, humping everything phase. And like I said, we're not trying to get into the intimate details.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
your mindset right now, just so we could, like I say, the constructive conversation. So
for me, I didn't.
I think each one of us started at different points, and where you are now, it'd be interesting to see if what that looks like.
For me, I didn't grow up religious, but I always believed in wait until you were married to have sex. I don't know where the hell I got that from, but that's what I was on. No, that's what I was on. So every girl that I was involved with, prior to 19, when I gave up on that shit, I was like, this is gonna be this is gonna be my girlfriend who will eventually become my wife, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. Okay. So at that age, the answer is no for me. After that, I had my awakening that Damien talked about, because Shorty called me from school and was like, oh, I'm back on campus. What if I met somebody? And I was like, man, what's his name? And she's like, blah blah blah. I was like, so it's not, this is not what if, you already dealing with dude. So after that, I was like, run through all of them. So at that stage, yes. And I did so. But then later I was like, I don't want to be a whore. So I flipped the switch back off to a no. And it was back on the relationship stuff. And honestly, even now in my divorce stage, I have opportunities to have friends with benefits, like uh 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 explicitly stated to me, hey, this is what this is. And I'm like, I can't do this longer than like 3 months because I feel bad. No, for real. I
Yeah.
feel bad. I feel
No, I
bad.
get you.
I feel like
get you.
I'm
I'm not
disgracing.
laughing because it's not true, and you're not.
But it's the time frame.
I swear to God.
He
It's like
has a
I'm only
time
gonna
frame.
eat this.
Right.
It's like
I
I'm on a
swear to God.
diet, and so these are my reward or cheat days.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah.
can only do this for 3 months.
This is my 90-day P90X workout.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
After that,
we need to be doing something serious. I cannot be a whore, and I cannot be in relation. I can't talk to a whore. Like, that makes me cheap. So I'm like, we need to make this. I need to make my parents proud.
okay, I got you, Greg. I got you.
Yeah. Yeah. So the answer, I think, is no. I feel like people all have their own desires. It's not just for men, but you do have the pressures from society to say this is what you're supposed to be, just so that they have somebody to point the finger at, in my opinion. If you're
there's
a
the
man,
stigma, right?
So let me ask y'all this
Yeah.
before T.O. goes. So do y'all like that narrative? Because
No.
it varies, and I know T.O. and I still have to talk on that. But so what do you feel like when you, because that when I hear the narrative, whether it's a man saying it or women saying it, I agree with Greg that I think it's of your own desires.
Right.
I don't buy, and even when we listen to that one podcast, what you call it, tonight's conversation or last night's conversation or whatever, or
Yeah,
not tonight's conversation. When I like, I liked some of the clips in the beginning, and then now as I'm kind of listening to some of them, I'm looking and like, there's a bunch of people kind of having these things, and as I'm listening, it's like, And the reason being is because I listen to people making excuses for their decisions to do what they're doing. And my thought is if that's what you want to do, that's on you. Like, that's not someone else's, like that's not someone, you could blame a woman for why a man continues to cheat, or why, like because she keep letting them come back. If she don't, man, stop it with the nonsense. Like, if
Personal
that's what you want, that's
responsibility.
what you're going to do. And that feeds the narrative is that's what we're only looking for is the sex factor. And it's just what men say, but it's not just men. And then you got your women doing that. So it's just one of those interesting thoughts that you're right, Greg. I don't think it's just is what we want. I think it's your own desires that lead you there.
And real quick before you guys go, it for so long that narrative has been out there, right? Like that men only want sex, right? Like because of certain behaviors that get highlighted in some way, shape, or form, there's that stigma was created from the fact that, oh, men are only after one thing, right? And yes, when we're younger, like what you were saying, Will, there's a portion of that, but I also feel like some of that comes from a desire of acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So it's
depending on your peer group, that can be a
right.
lot of
You
pressure.
want to be right. There's a lot of pressure. There's also the fact that you want to feel in some way, shape, or form, even if they're your, P90X workout buddies, Greg. I think when you're, in your younger years, there's still some sort of level, at least I think so, where you want to have somebody accept you or desire you.
But we talked about this, and our last part. Validation. It's validation. We could say all of those other words and we could dance around it.
Yeah, you're right.
We're looking to feel validated for whatever we feel is missing in us. And you use sex as a reason to do it. And I ain't saying everyone does this because they're different reasons. My men only want sex journey. And it's funny because I'm quick to admit, like, and admit with shame that some of the actions, like when those things, like, and when I talk about not being, and I've not said it on the podcast, but not being a great husband in my last, in my last relationship, because I don't like the actions I took. It didn't mean that I didn't provide. It didn't mean that I wasn't a good, relationship person. Didn't mean I didn't sit down and have conversations. You name it, I was willing to do it. But I know when I didn't feel validated, I hated some of the actions I allowed myself to take, and it was no one to blame but myself for them dumbass.
That's right.
It wasn't someone else. It wasn't her. It was solely me. When I think about my journey and my view and perspective of sex, I remember. So my mom had two boys. I was the oldest. My younger brother was of course, he was the youngest. That was great. Sound real dumb. He was the youngest. My younger brother was the oldest.
That's some Benjamin Button stuff.
My younger brother, we had different fathers, and so, but we grew up together. So for the longest time, before I even knew about my father, I used to think his father and his father's family was my family. And I remember he had uncles on that side. And I don't know if it was porn that they let us watch, but we were real young. And I remember seeing sex scenes in this movie. And I remember from an early age, we started acting those scenes out with girls and with girls in the neighborhood. So it really distorted my view, but it was just more the action of imitating what was seen on TV. When I got to my middle school, high school years, I'm sorry, bro. I can't. Greg is a nut, man. Greg is an
Will
idiot.
Will
Go
was
ahead.
in the kiddie pool reenacting the beginning scenes of Coming to America with the
Nah,
bathers.
bro. It was more like the
Porky.
it was more
He
like the
wasn't
Fred
Porky.
Williamson, James
Oh,
Brown,
he
old
was watching
70s
the
black
he was
70s,
exploitation
watching
movie.
yeah.
Dolomite. He
Yeah,
was
it
watching
was the black
Dolomite.
it was the black exploitation chumpies, bro, back in the day. And like I said, gave you this whole weird vibe, but like I say, that started the weird, something weird from my viewpoint of sex. Then once we
Yeah.
got to middle school, high school, I remember wanting a relationship. I remember wanting to be in
Mhm.
relationships, and I had a next door neighbor we were friends, and then us being, I throw up head quotes because we did start out friends. And to this day, it's funny because I realized the relational person that I am. I still keep the friend note that she wrote me maybe 30 something years ago. Like I still keep because the friend aspect of it is when she gave it to me when we were friends.
Mhm.
But when she went through a breakup, of course I'm there, but I was the rebound guy. Not
Right.
because she liked slash really liked me. I ain't gonna say love me as a friend, but we were really close friends. But I became the rebound guy, but the rebound guy falls in love with this girl. So as I'm falling in love with her, when she's now ready to be like, this is not the relationship that I really want, I'm ready to move on. She, instead of telling me honestly, she she creeps on me. And it's so funny because
Mm.
as I'm not, I've been playing the nice guy. I was really in my mind in love with her. And so as I'm in love with her, I'm 16, 15, 16, somewhere in that range. I think I'm 16. But as I'm 16, I go to her house, catch her with the dude. And
Ladies
when
and
I catch her
gentlemen,
with
Creep is a reference to a 90s song made popular by
TLC.
the group TLC,
Yeah.
whereas it's
I'm sorry,
a
I'm sorry.
term of
Creep, yeah.
infidelity. Infidelity.
Yeah. Infidelity, but we weren't married, so I'm not gonna go with the
Yeah.
infidelity, but she was seeing someone else.
Adultery is still adultery. Somebody was still getting swallowed up.
She and check it out. The way that the story goes, Greg. Look, I get to our house, know she's home. I'm knocking on the door, and her little sister, who can't reach the latch, is talking to me, saying and trying to saying I want she go. Her little sister eventually gets a chair, opens the door. I get in. She lets me in the house. I walk in. I don't catch them in the act, but she's laying down sleep. Old boy sitting on the bed. I walk around him and tap her on the shoulder, like, and she looks like, oh, damn. So of course, when I say it effed me up, like that was the hot and horny, like I'm I'm up, bro. I'm really messed up in my head, and I'm like, you know what? I ain't
Yep.
no love, no none of this stuff.
That
But
sounds like a scene from Juice or one of those other 90s movies.
yeah. Except for it was real life, and I don't think it was. This was still in the 80s, so it's still in the 80s at the time. But that happens, and once that kind of happens, I go through this phase of anything that moves, any friend that want to hook me up with anybody, just go through it. But once again, as I stated about being validation, I felt not valued, and because I felt not valued, that messed with me in my head. And so for me, just going through this, but like you, Greg, I kind of hit that point of this is boring. It wasn't fun. It didn't do anything for me, and it wasn't doing anything even for the ego standpoint. I
Right.
didn't care for it, and so because I didn't care for it, what was next for me was I wanted a relationship, but that was at the same time I kind of like saw kids and like wanted to feel that love that I saw other people's kids having towards them. That kind of led to me wanting a kid as a teenager because I wanted to feel that type of love, not realizing that's not the same type of love you feel from a partner that you feel from a kid. But that kind of got me to that phase. But that would always linger through me living and even in my adulthood, because whenever I felt like I wasn't validated, is when I would allow myself to let someone make me feel value and stuff like that. And so I had to learn to kind of like get that out. And it wasn't until I realized that I was sabotaging myself and sabotaging my relationship that is like, it wasn't the sex that I was looking for. It was the validation, and kind of where I settle and where I am right now in my journey with sex is just that thing of I found that peace And even though I'm in what I consider, what I know as a healthy relationship, and what I'm enjoying as a healthy relationship, what makes me feel whole is understanding kind of who I am and the pain that I don't want to cause myself, don't want to cause anyone else, because I have something that makes me feel invalidated. And if there's a moment where something affects me, we're going to sit down, we're going to conversate, we're going to talk, and we're going to work our way through it, because what I don't want to do is I hated the damage that I was doing to me first, then the people that I was doing that with, and the person I was with. So for me, the men only want sex thing. I think you want that only when you know that hurt that's inside of you. You feel like you're being validated through that action, and that's what you're looking.
I will say, Will, to add a little bit of clarity on the validation from my perspective, I definitely understand what you're saying, because it wasn't for me during my whole phase all about the sex every time. It was about me getting the permission. So the permission to share this or experience this with somebody, regardless of who it was, just the permission, because I felt like there were so many barriers put up for me that I was like, okay, when I do what D says and start, not caring, and I start having these opportunities are turning into successful, opportunities. So I'm just like, yo, this is great. Like, it was definitely a booster for me. But then looking back, it's like, I ain't even like her, for real. Or
I'll let you bring her in a second.
That's the worst feeling for me. That was the worst feeling in the world, when you actually realize, man, I just did that for no reason. Like, there wasn't even any care in this, and I
could tell you, I was. It was almost like I advertised to be the rebound guy for some people.
Oh yeah,
because I didn't have. Bro. I had no emotional connection to. I knew exactly what my purpose was.
Especially when you figure out the code. When you figure out the code, I'll do it.
Yeah, girls would just break up with their boyfriend sometime in a petty little fight for 2 weeks, and they would come and see me, and I'd just be fine with it, because it didn't have any type of that emotional connection.
I make the best grilled cheese. I make the best grilled. Come on.
Why don't you come over? We'll go to Blockbuster. Yeah. We'll go to Blockbuster and get,
Blockbuster. Pretty Woman's your favorite
my thing
movie,
wasn't the grilled cheese. I was a breakfast guy. I would get you to Hook School. I would get him to Hook School and hit him with breakfast. That was my thing.
Hey,
all right, Tio, why don't you bring us home on this?
I think enough has been said on the topic. I mean, I spoke a whole lot earlier, so I'm not even arguing about jumping in on this convo. Like, for real, I realized that's, as we deal with this, I mean, I just bring a whole different perspective, right? So, I mean, you're looking, like you said, all of us were looking for validation at some point in time in the various different ways. And how we got through, the whole sex things, like, come on. It's really just looking through validation through sex. I mean, at the end of the day. And it's just like, I even looked at the fact, like, not having my dad and looking for that validation, it really made me go out and find validation through women, because when we talk about masculinity, so I'm just going to tie all this together. When we talk about masculinity, I was one of those dudes. I've always been an emotional cat. I was one. I'll fight you, because I couldn't snap on nobody, bust a dozens. I couldn't do any of that.
You just gave us an emotional bro hug. Like, I'm gonna hug you, but I'm gonna hit you at the same time.
Exactly.
Like,
you know what I'm saying?
Like I'm emotional, but I fight you. Like, I just want you to know.
Exactly. Like, yo, fam, like, we gonna fight. Like, yo, just put your hands up, we gonna get into it. You gonna beat me, I'm gonna beat you. Then we go on from there. You know what I'm saying? If you beat me, I respect you. If you hold up a good fight, I respect you, and we can rock later.
All right, your masculinity is in full bloom. Go ahead, bro.
Yep.
But I was a full emotional cat. But I always like to talk, though. You know what I mean? That was one of my things, and I found that just talking a lot got me into a lot of access that I was not expecting to have access to, and then I think at a certain point in time, that whole phase, being that rebound dude, you realize you just had access. You're like, oh, if I just listen long enough, I'm gonna get some access. But again, all of it still was just pointing to just trying to be validated. You know, I just want to be seen. I want to be heard. And man, this is too emotional. I mean,
He says too emotional. He
That's
says therapy all over again. Look,
right.
but look, as
But
we talk about masculinity, it's so funny that we're veering down the path of the emotional aspect of this, because I think a lot of times with the way that I don't consider it a weakness to be emotional. I don't consider it a weakness for us to kind of discuss these things, because like you said, from the sports to the escapades, the sexual escapades, I don't think for me, none of that validated the person that I am. We talked also about the desire to be connected to our kids and the role we want to play. That makes me feel like a man. That makes me feel like, and when I say makes me feel like a man, makes me feel like the human being that I was created to be, and the role that I was created to be in the lives of those individuals who were in my care.
Will.
Huh?
I said thank you, because I was going to touch on similar to what you're saying. For me, being a man doesn't necessarily mean all the masculine aspects, blah, blah, blah. It's being a full human being a full
Right.
adult. So it's like I was just given this gender from birth. So my term is going to be man versus woman. But it's like being a collection of all of these skills, all of these traits makes you a man, and like owning them.
But what I do believe in, and what I'm a full believer in, is the human experience. And I'm a big advocate for, understanding who we are on a whole as a human being. And so for me, I don't see tenderness as just a female trait. I don't see nurture as just a motherly characteristic.
Yeah.
It's a human characteristic. And for those who are of the faith, for those who believe the Bible, I can't speak. I have the Quran. I have it around, and I've read tons of things on lots of religions and stuff like that. But for those who are of the Christian faith, one of the things I always say to them is there were not motherly characteristics exhibited through God of the Bible. There were just spiritual characteristics exhibited through the God of the Bible. And because they were spiritual characteristics, if you exhibited them, you were fully the spiritual being that you're supposed to be. And to me, I think we do a disservice to humanity as a whole when we try to say a characteristic belongs to a man or a woman, because I feel no less when I'm sitting with my children, my daughters, and they're crying on me, or I'm being able to sob and cry with them. That doesn't make me feel less than a man. It doesn't make me, and it's funny, from the times that, like I say, mind you, love sports. You guys know I love to lift. I love to lift a lot. I do all, like, I'm good with all of that stuff to this day. But that doesn't make me feel like a man. And even to the point when I tell people, I said, man, you know what? I said, I'm 50 years old. My goal is not to talk about walking down the street whipping your butt. I'm a grown ass man. That's not my role. And even when I was in my early 20s, one of the things I said to a gentleman who tried to challenge me on a job, and as he's talking, as I called him out, he was lying to me about something. I called him out on his lie, and he's like, "I'll fight you right now." And I said, "I'll press full charges on you. I'll take your government clearance. I'll make sure you take your license." I said, "You will not work, because I will go to court and press every charge on you."
I will take everything
man
from you.
who pays all of my bills, who takes care of his. I defined it to him. I told him, like, what makes me a man is me taking care of my responsibility and the nurturing care I provide for my family. I said, "You thinking we're going to fight right here is going to prove you're a man? I will humble your ass by taking all of your credentials." No, I'm just saying, though. I'm just saying. I'm sure you're just saying, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, like I say, that whole experience of what being a man is and stuff like that, like I say, I feel fully secure in who I am, and I don't feel like I have to prove it to anyone. But I feel more connected when I'm doing these exhibiting my spiritual characteristics in this life that I live, instead of the worldly definitions of what a man does and does not look like.
It's challenging sometimes, though, when you don't fit the society's image, and then you got to deal with people passing judgment based on the fact that you don't fit what they, have, the image that they have. And it's not to say that, oh, I'm going home, I'm crying because they're saying this, that, and the other, but it's just unnecessary stress.
It's fact.
Unnecessary
I agree.
stress. I shouldn't have to prove myself to you. If I told you this is what I am, catch me when you have reason to believe that I'm not. But until you experience something or you witness something, that's who I am.
I think that's our insecurities, though, Greg.
Yeah.
I think when I say insecurities, I'm not, and I'm not even saying it from a judgment standpoint. I think sometimes when we don't know who we fully are, it's easy for us to critique someone for being what we don't know who we are. So I'm gonna critique you for not being what I think you should be because I haven't realized who I am yet.
I just heard almost exactly that, like 10 minutes before we got on the first call. Because I'm still having issue with this girl who was one of those friends. I was a rebound, blah, blah, blah. But we were friends for years. Recently in a phone call, she was like, "You're self-centered." And I'm like, whoa, I'm self-centered for buying your kids dinner because you couldn't. I'm self-centered for, offering to fix your car, so because you didn't have the money to go to, Jiffy Lube or Meineke or whatever. But I'm self-centered. So I was talking to another friend of mine, and she said exactly what you said, Will. She's probably insecure. That's why she's, saying X, Y, and Z to you. She probably feels this, that, and the other about her experience. But I'm like, that doesn't change how I feel because I want to know what the hell she's, referring to. But anyway, that's another episode.
That's a whole nother episode and a whole bunch of other topics in there, boy.
Right. Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it ain't.
Yo, you don't even understand how much you done put in that sandwich right there, bro. You put a whole lot of ingredients in there,
bro. When we get to the episode about can men and women be friends, y'all gonna judge me a lot.
I'm not gonna
it's not going to be a judgment.
There's not going to be a judgment.
I think we're going to be as we're looking to kind of bring this to a close. I think once we get to those places, I think what we're going to do is you're silly, bro. But my thought is to seek to understand, because the goal is we're speaking to each other, but knowing that we're going to have other ears listening.
Yeah.
So for me, it's you to continue to be able to share your experiences, because this entire night for us was, to me, a little bit of therapy. We are, and I appreciate, like I said, we brought the humor this week like we were supposed to. But as T.O., you said it best, this was super emotional, and we didn't even go down as deep as we could dig down deep into some of these things. And while there's surface things, and like in the future,
we opened up a number of doors in this topic.
Yeah, D Smooth, you're looking forward to bringing on your friend that's the therapist, the counselor.
Like I say,
I think this asshole, man. This dude. Look, bro. I'm trying. Okay. There's certain words I'm trying not to put on here. You just got to say two of the words that I'm trying to avoid saying on here. But
Greg just
but I think one of the things that I think she's going to do well on is this. Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
She's going to be able to do well, I think, and listening to this, it'd be a good episode for us to kind of delve into when she has some time to spend with us, just checking in with us on some of these particular topics, because we did touch on several different things, and we started off with masculinity, but we touched on parenting, the aspect of sex, our roles that our fathers played or didn't play, like we touched on so many different things just as we were going through this role of trying to define what masculinity is, and trying to figure out where we land.
We didn't even touch on the masculinity, like you were talking about, like being able to show emotion, publicly, and even the masculinity and the expectations of sex, right? Like, are you, from a partner standpoint, we're looking for the manly, guy, or they were looking for the guy that they can talk to and be sensitive with, right? Like there's still even those topics.
And don't forget, we also talked about the whole aspect of when we bring race into it, and not just race from a culture standpoint, because we could say race, but T.O., you and I you grew up, you're county boy, T.O. I'm East Boy. You're all county boy. Stop it.
I was like, whoa, hold on. What you saying?
You're from Columbia, as your wife likes to say. You're from Columbia, but swear it was Compton. Every time I see Marcellus Wiley say from Compton to Columbia, I think of you. I don't think of Columbia University. I think of Toby Anderson is who I think of.
Well, straight up, for the first few months that I knew Toby, I thought he was from Compton for real. We had conversations about him being from Cali.
You're a lie. You're
Toby,
a straight up
we
lie.
did.
What
I
are you
thought you were
talking
from.
about? Yo, you
He
really
meant
gonna
Compton,
believe
New
Gray?
Jersey.
Yeah.
You really gonna believe Gray?
I thought he was from California. No lie.
Listen, look, bruh. I believe you for this reason. He would always talk to us about the tough parts of Howard County, and he would talk to us about how rough it was, you know.
He did.
Yeah.
And
That's
I've been
him.
to Columbia, and I'm like, where?
And look, he gonna swear to you, and he gonna take you to the rough parts.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna take his little ass
This
over.
Starbucks?
Yeah.
Then we can
Giving
go over to
refunds.
You see this
we're gonna take him
abandoned
over to
Home
West
Depot?
Baltimore. I'm not gonna take him to East Baltimore. We take him to West Baltimore
First,
so he can
first
see
of
those
all,
aspects of the wire.
This
Let me
used to
do-
be a dog park, and then they put a
Yeah.
7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
y'all ain't gonna talk about my neighborhood like that, yo.
Oh, we ain't talking about it. We talking
No.
about it in an affirming way that it wasn't
Yeah.
a hood.
Look,
This is what
I'm
we
gonna say
saying.
it. I'm gonna say it in a way that Will can understand. We talking about you. You.
I think that's where we end.
I got a song for you by my man Wish Granted.
No, please don't.
You got
Please don't.
nah, buddy.
And
You got me talking like you,
Oh, all right. We're gonna close out. D. This is
We're gonna
your
close out.
episode, bro.
Yep, indeed. All right. So I think tonight we not only opened up some doors, like I said before, but we have a number of other avenues to pursue under this topic that in another episode we could probably dive in deeper and get some other perspectives on. But I think tonight I think we really hit a lot of key points here, and I think we were able to kind of show the people that do listen to our podcast that as men and trying to define what masculinity is, and trying to understand where some of the emotional standpoints and this solid brotherhood that we have here, and the understanding of who we are as human beings, not just under the general role of men and women, but just as human beings. And I think that we have quite a bit of information today that I think is going to be useful to a lot of people. And I think like I said, as we get further down the line with some of these other things we can dive into, I think it's really going to live up to the name of the four wise men. So that's what we got tonight.
Well, I thank you for your participation.
Greg, don't get swallowed.
Isn't that the goal? Didn't we say that's what we're looking for, bro?